Oh no, I just heard her go to the bathroom in her own pantaloons. Oh, nobody said to do that, you weirdo. Sul, hello, and Labas. Welcome back to another episode of the Payne Family Ultimate Decades Challenge. Today, sadly, we're starting off with a wife who couldn't control her bladder and who's very embarrassed, and a family who's, getting by as they get by. Now, today marks the beginning of the year 1307. It's a pretty important year for historical events, and so I just wanted to talk about those because I think it gives a lot of background to other things that'll end up happening shortly hereafter in the future. So, I guess we kind of have to start with Edward the First because, well, his death is what leads into all of this. So, let's just get Greece started on something. So, Edward the First was King of England before 1307. He inherited sort of the Duchy of Aquitaine, or the lands of Aquitaine, through inheritance, through some of the earlier medieval kings and marriages that had gone on. And he was quite an impressive and fearsome character at his time. He was 6'2", and there was a story that I heard but couldn't find any evidence of that somebody actually had died of fright at meeting him, and that was a story that was told by his peers. Edward the First also had a couple nicknames. He had the nickname Edward Longshanks because he was so tall, and medieval people with their nicknames tend to be quite literal. And he was also known as Malleus Scotorum, or the Hammer of Scotland. He had quite strong military might. He wanted to, or he did conquer Wales, and he attempted to conquer Scotland. He also did some legal work. He regulated both criminal and property laws. He established parliament. And he was respected by people at the time, his people specifically, as the ideal of a medieval king. Meaning he, was an administrator who was quite thoughtful. He was a staunchly religious man, and he was a powerful soldier who escaped from captivity and engaged in many battles as he was trying to, take over Scotland and Wales. However, he wasn't a perfect person, obviously. He ran into trouble when he owed too much debt to the Jewish community, and he wanted to get rid of the problem. So at the time, lending money at interest to Christians was considered a sin if you were a Christian. Lending money at an interest to Jewish people was considered a problem or a sin if you were Jewish. But a nice little loophole that people could use to get around that would be to have Jewish people lend money to Christians, which was not a sin. So Jewish people were actually brought over to England under a legal requirement that they would lend money, and Edward ended up having so much debt to them that he didn't know how he could pay it, and instead basically decreed that they had to leave the country entirely. So that is now Edward also originally was someone who, wanted to take over all of these places, and he approached it in kind of a calm, level-headed way. But as time went on, the war with Scotland became really personal when it overlapped with Gascony. And so basically the Scottish allied with the French, and at that point Edward kind of lost his mind. He just went a little bit nutso bagutso, and it became really personal for him. He started, going out of his way to try and get his hands on family members or, children of his, enemies, as he would see it. And he, in fact, was so dedicated to campaigning against Scotland that he died, probably of dysentery, while he was doing that. That's how he passes away in 1307. And his famous last words are, "Wrap my bones in a hammock and have them carried before the army, so that I may still lead the way to victory." Quite a character. Quite a character. His son, Edward II, was the fourth son that he had, and he's the one who ends up inheriting the throne. By all accounts, Edward II was a handsome guy. He was also quite tall. I think I remember somewhere it saying that he was also around 6'2". However, he was really uninterested in military pursuits or tournaments, and his interests actually lay in things like digging ditches, thatching, swimming, and metalwork. So, not very princely hobbies. He made friends easily with the common people, and so he was really liked for that for a long time. And apparently, he was like quite down to earth. He enjoyed theater and singing. He was quite pious, and by all accounts, he was a really good and loving father to his children. However, he's not going to make a very good leader for a number of different reasons. So in 1307, he marries Isabella of France, and Isabella at the time was only 12, while Edward is 23. Nobody said the Middle Ages were perfect, and I don't think anybody thought that either. Isabella's quite interesting because even though she's a woman at the time, she learned to read and was given a really strong education despite the fact that she was female, and she was loved and cherished by her parents. She grew up as well seeing how love could be in a marriage because her father really loved her mother, and she grew up seeing a relationship between a king and a queen modeled with mutual respect as well as an appreciation for the other person. So she was actually engaged to Edward at the age of 4, but they don't get married until she's 12. Now, kind of to give some backstory, Isabella's dad is Philip IV, also known as Philip the Fair, because he was a good-looking guy. Again, medieval people with their nicknames. Very clever. Oh, the brothers are jokesters. So cute. You guys can do whatever you want right now. I'm talking about history. Oh, Evan and Summer letter coming over. I wonder what they're doing. So, Isabella's father was Philip IV, Philip the Fair, King of France, and he has been described as a silent, despotic, or tyrannical king. He was described once by a member of the clergy as not a man nor a beast, but a statue. I think that says quite a lot. He was very feared and very respected by his contemporaries. People did not want to mess with him. He increased the land that France held, and he was absolutely devoted and in love and committed to his wife. He pulled the same kind of move as Edward I and expelled the Jews from France in 1306 for the same financial reason. He was too much in debt, and he didn't want to have to pay it. And in fact, he ends up going after the Knights Templars in 1307 for the same reason, but that's a whole other side story. And I don't know if anybody's really interested in that, so maybe we'll get into it, maybe we won't. He was married to Joan I of Navarre, a queen of Navarre. I don't even know if I'm saying that right, but she was a countess of Champagne in her own right, and she was also queen of France, I think, through marriage. She was beloved by her people. She was efficient as a queen. She was strong as a woman, and she was very capable. So she was respected, and she was like a powerful role model for, oh no, sorry, Gree. But she was sort of, a really powerful influence and a good example of a woman to her daughter, Isabella of France. I heard one historian saying that it's likely that Isabella was really excited for her marriage to Edward because he was such a handsome guy, and she grew up seeing, these ideal relationships between a man and a woman of respect and love and care. And so maybe she thought that's what it was going to be, but Edward really isn't going to end up being the husband that she's going to want him to be or expect him to be. So Edward II, apparently, his father was concerned that he didn't have enough friends, and at some point introduced him to a man named Piers Gaveston. Piers is an indiscreet, ambitious, and arrogant individual. He's really after himself and what he can get out of any situation, but apparently he could be quite charming, and he really was very charming to Edward. Their relationship, Edward's and Piers's, has come under a lot of scrutiny because chroniclers of the time suggested that there was more to their relationship than just friendship. But they both were married. They both had children. I think even Edward II had a child through a mistress, not even through marriage. So I don't know. I don't know that it really matters, first of all. And also, I don't know that there's, how can we know? It was a long time ago. Some evidence people provide for the fact that perhaps this is true is that there is no evidence of a wedding ceremony at Isabella and Edward's wedding. But again, she was 12 years old and he was 23. And so I think that's kind of probably a point in Edward's favor. So their marriage happens the 25th of January in 1308. I think that's a mistake. At a cathedral in France, 8 kings and queens are present. Everything seems to be going well. Everything seems to be going fine. Isabella's relatively happy until they arrive in England, and Edward abandons her as soon as the ship docks and runs to Piers and apparently greets him overly affectionately. Lots of kisses, lots of exclamations, lots of holding each other and excitement. Isabella's uncles had traveled with her, and they were horribly offended by this display. And then, as it turns out, Edward had assigned a pretty much non-existent income to her. There was no treasury to dower her, and she ended up seeing Piers one day wearing the jewels that her father had gifted to her and Edward, as well as the jewels that she herself owned. So she saw Piers wearing her jewelry. That is wild. She wrote to her father about it, and once again, Philip the Fair, not a man you want to mess with, not a guy you want to piss off. Her father wrote back to Edward demanding that he take care of her and demanding a plan to explain how he was going to take care of her. And this is going to be a bit of an ongoing theme for Isabella. At the coronation ceremony that happened shortly after the wedding, Piers once again makes a pretty fatal mistake. He shows up in a pearl-studded silk robe in imperial purple, aka royal purple, and he was carrying Saint Edward's crown. So he was carrying something he wasn't supposed to be touching, wearing a very fancy robe in a color he shouldn't have been wearing. At the feast for the coronation, Edward chose to sit with Piers rather than his 12-year-old wife Isabella, and Piers displayed his coat of arms with the king's. That is scandalous, guys. Isabella's uncles returned to France in a spitting rage, sharing all of the things that were seen as insults with her father. Edward, in the meantime, continues to treat Piers with all kinds of extra affection and attention. And Piers, at some point in this whole process, suggests to Edward to annul the marriage to Isabella, which Philip the Fair finds out about. Yikes. Shortly thereafter, Piers has really made some enemies. Edward's not too popular with the barons, who all want to be respected and treated equally, and they are really upset. That's ironic, since they have serfs, that they want to be treated equally, but you know what I mean. So they really are going after Edward, and they're like, you got to kick this guy out. This guy's a jerk. We don't want him around. You keep giving him stuff you're not giving to us. It's not very fair. And so at this point, Philip warns Edward that if he doesn't exile Piers, then he's going to side with the barons, and he's going to work with them to try and basically kick Edward out of power. So, it's a really messy start. It's a really messy start to their marriage. I do have the two of them in the game, but I'm sorry, I have more than just the two of them in the game. I have like a bunch of royals in the game, but I didn't really want to get into the habit of like working on, looking into the royals, because I feel like that could be quite distracting, and it's just going to be a little bit easier to like kind of give some backstory here and there rather than go to their homes. I mean, it's already 8:15 and all I've done is tell like the story of 1307, you know what I mean? They are going to have some pretty wild times. They're a really interesting royal couple. I'm shocked that it doesn't come up more, but I guess what can you do? So that's kind of where we are situated historically at this point in time. We have conflict with Scotland in the Scottish Wars of Independence, which have been influenced because Scotland made an alliance with France, and that made Edward the First, Edward the Second's father, quite angry. We also have got Edward the Second, the now king, having a very rocky start to his relationship with his wife and already being disliked by the earls, including Lancaster. It's really important to note that Lancaster has a bad relationship, especially with Piers. I think that Piers at one point calls him a dog, which really pissed off Lancaster because he really valued his intelligence. He thought he was an intelligent guy. I'm sure he was. His contemporaries noted he had a pretty big library, for whatever that matters. And so he thought of himself as a really smart guy, and I don't think he takes that insult very well. So that's kind of like a that's a brief recap of what's happening historically in England at this point in time. It's not that brief. It's like pretty crazy, isn't it? I just think it's quite interesting because a lot of the historical stuff that's going to happen from this point forward is related to these conflicts that are rooted so far in the past, and they seem so distant to, you know, like what ends up happening. Like when I first played this challenge and I got to the 100 Years' War, I was like, okay, we're at war, but why? And didn't have the slightest idea about what could possibly have led to that. And so, you know, I find it really interesting that now I know, you know, the more you know, I guess. So I've let these guys kind of hang out with themselves all day. I have no idea if they're even doing okay. They seem to be alive. They actually did take care of themselves. It's always a risk, you know, letting your Sims take care of themselves. It's a big risk, in fact. But they seem to be doing pretty okay. So I'll just get them all fed, get them in bed. I'm going to wake up our mediumest boy. And have them eat. And then, oh, Sif. As I was just saying, they were doing like pretty okay. And then I'll have them all go to bed. But I'm pretty sure, I was looking and I'm pretty sure that our good buddy Sif is going to go into labor around midnight. Oh, dang. Is that true? We've got to do some rearranging of this inside then. Yeah, I don't know if you guys like going through the historical overviews like that. Let me know if you do or if you don't. There's a couple of things we definitely will talk about regardless, because it's related to where Vilkas is going and what he is going to do there and why he's there in the first place. But other than that, you know, we don't have to talk about historical events. Some people find it interesting and some people think it's really boring. But I think that the English sort of like royalty at this point in time is just wild because they are doing some crazy stuff. Brown cow isn't our cow. Leave us alone.
What's the knot?
Oh, and this is it. Sif is in labor. We're gonna get this over with snappishly. Darius, I'd like you to finish what you're doing. Oh, girlfriend. Forgot she was squeamish. She's grossed out by everything. Listen, the 1300s, they're a rough time to be alive. Why isn't this on? I think it's busted. Sorry, Sif, just 1 second. They're all busted. Okay, I'll deal with them in a second. No, I forgot. Oh my gosh, I don't know why I keep doing this. I forgot to have a woman who'd already successfully given birth come over. That means that Sif is gonna have an extra role. Sif, I'm so sorry. This is my fault. I've done this to you. I mean, obviously I've done this to you in more ways than one, but like, I'm the one responsible for you having an extra role. Come on, Sif, you can do it. You can do it. Looks like baby is here. Hopefully just one baby. And a girl. Oh. Do you think Sif would be upset if we named our first baby girl together Selby after our wife? Maybe that is a bit risky. We'll name her Dovile instead. Oh, little baby girl, Dovile. Oh, Sif, that's not a good look. Oh, after our sister. So we'll just have them do a few things together, and then we will go ahead and do their roles of destiny. Oops, sorry, Sif.
Hiya, boo. Kumao, Boba. My dog ignore.
Okay, Sif, go potty. Squeamish about your baby? Oh, from changing the diaper? Fair enough. Okay, she's apparently... No, buddy, I need you. What are you doing? Okay, fair enough, but you're really tired, bud. Yeah, what a scene. What a scene we have here. Oh, he seems happy. Okay. We'll go ahead and roll for them now. Okay, so as we note, the first one never counts at all. So the first one doesn't count. First, we'll be rolling for Sif. And I did forget to have another woman who's given birth before, so hopefully this doesn't get her. You know, we might be going through wives, but we're keeping our kids. It's a really dark way of framing it. Oh my gosh, and he's okay too. We are so lucky right now with these kids. So I think Harlan might be a little stressed about Leanne's birthday, because look at that face, but Leanne seems happy enough. Oh, thank goodness. Man, this family and their babies, they are so lucky with their babies. So lucky. First one never counts. No. No, 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 no. Oh, no. Oh, dang it. Dang it.